Traveling through the world of Marvel, Zhou Cheng gained the ability to become stronger by writing a diary. However, Zhou Cheng did not know that the diary he wrote was not only visible to him. The art style of the whole world gradually began to become out of place. Tony. I'm not Iron Man, don't shout around. US Team. Bucky, go surrender and take advantage of everything. Thor. Father, you gave birth to a sister for me without telling me. Soy egg. From now on, I want to be the boss of the Hydra. Zhou Cheng. Did I travel through a fake Marvel? Keywords of the novel. People writing diaries in Meimanga, Iron Man collapses without pop-ups at the beginning. People writing diaries in Meimanga, Iron Man collapses at the beginning. Download the complete set of TXT, People writing diaries in Meimanga, Iron Man collapses at the beginning. Read the latest chapter on Iron Man's collapse at the beginning. Chapter 1. Tony Stark's Messy Diary. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Tony Stark's Messy Diary. Marbury, the most luxurious villa by the seaside. A basement with a larger area than the entire house of a typical family. Move and hit. The deafening heavy metal music was rampant and noisy. The highly rhythmic melody seemed to ignite the entire scene. Tony Stark immersed himself in this wonderful melody while holding some tools to modify a luxury car. Don't mention how comfortable it is. Sir, Miss Pepper is calling. The volume on site suddenly turned down, and Jarvis's voice rang in his ears. At such times, if it were an ordinary person, Tony Stark would definitely not pay attention. After all, the world is vast, and that's just Tony Stark's pleasure, isn't it? But Pepper is clearly an exception. Bring it in. Tony Stark gave this order to Jarvis without much hesitation. Schwa. The next moment. A projection screen was projected in front of Tony Stark. On screen. It was Peppa Potts, a highly skilled assistant dressed in a professional dress. What's wrong? Tony Stark greeted Pepper without lifting his head as he carried out the operation at hand. Everyone has been waiting for you for half an hour, why are you still at home? Pepper didn't talk nonsense to Tony Stark and directly questioned him when he came up. Because I had no intention of attending that boring meeting at all. Tony Stark spoke confidently, that's a waste of life, I can't bear even a minute. Tony, I told you before that this meeting is very important. All shareholders are here, everyone is waiting for your report. Pepper felt his blood pressure was slightly high, but he patiently persuaded Tony Stark. Then I won't even go. Can you imagine me living in the same room with a group of old men? Oh my goodness, what a disaster this is. Tony Stark remains as serious as ever. What about the meeting? Just make them wait, it's not the first time. Tony Stark is naturally authentic. Pepper looked helpless, but there was nothing he could do. Who calls their own boss, the most unreliable and unremarkable second generation of stubborn wealthy Americans? Is there anything else? Tony Stark continued to bury himself in his renovation work. Okay, I will try my best to find another excuse. Pepper was defeated in the battle. The call with Tony Stark was interrupted. Tony Stark continued to immerse himself in his own modifications. Pop. Putting down a wrench casually, Tony Stark's movements suddenly paused slightly. Because he noticed that there was an extra black notebook on the workbench next to him at some point. What? Tony Stark's brow couldn't help but furrow slightly. What the hell? Where did this notebook come from? This workbench was temporarily built by him during the afternoon modification. And throughout the entire modification process, no one else came in at all. So, how could such a notebook suddenly appear? Did Pepper come before? Tony Stark could only think of such a possibility after much thought. Pepper knows the password at his home, and the other party has the freedom to enter and exit their own home. Even if Pepper comes, unless there are special circumstances, Jarvis will not specifically remind Tony Stark. So the situation becomes very obvious. It must have been Pepper who came before, but was immersed in his work and didn't notice him. But the problem is, why did Pepper leave quietly without saying a word? Although Tony Stark has already deduced the truth, there are still some things that are not right no matter what he thinks. Jarvis, has Pepper been here before? Tony Stark asked Jarvis about the situation. Sir, when was that before you mentioned it? Last time Miss Pepper came, it was 3 days ago. 3 days ago. This is not right. 3 days ago, there was no such workbench at all. Are you sure it was 3 days ago? Tony Stark was vaguely confused. Sir, I'm pretty sure. Jarvis's answer was a resounding and powerful one. Tony Stark began to fall into contemplation. And this time, no matter how he thought, he couldn't figure out what was going on. So, who put this notebook here? Tony Stark stopped wasting his brain cells and started picking up the notebook, directly asking Jarvis. Anyway, no matter who put it, it can't hide from Jarvis's eyes. Sir, this notebook was not kept by anyone. It appeared on its own. But Jarvis gave an answer that Tony Stark never expected. Jarvis, this is not the time for humor. Tony Stark didn't mind either, thinking it was Jarvis teasing him. After all, his artificial intelligence is really intelligent, teasing the owner and all that is basic skills. Sir, you can see for yourself. Schwa. At this point, Jarvis projected an image in front of Tony Stark. That was the scene of Tony Stark busy in front of the workbench, and of course, the main perspective was on the workbench. As for the time, it was 15 minutes ago. But it was clearly displayed on the screen that there were no laptops on the workbench. But after a few seconds of the progress bar running. Schwa. Very abrupt. A notebook appeared out of thin air on the workbench. What? What the hell? Even with Tony Stark's exceptional intelligence, it was completely chaotic at this moment. There, this notebook really popped up on its own. Did someone master the technology of space transfer and transfer this laptop over? Still say it. Jarvis was hacked and controlled by the mastermind behind the scenes to deceive himself. Okay, no matter who you are, you have successfully caught my attention. Let me see what this notebook has to offer. Tony Stark's appetite was completely aroused. He no longer hesitated and held the notebook in his hand. Upon closer inspection, Zhou Cheng's diary book, a few large characters on the title page first caught Tony Stark's eye. So, this notebook turned out to be a diary. But who is Zhou Cheng? Tony Stark tilted his head and thought carefully, but he couldn't even remember such a number one person. However, Tony Stark did not delve too much into these, and he proceeded to turn to the next page. His face suddenly became somewhat exciting. Good guy, I'm just a good guy. Guess who I saw on TV? Iron Man Tony Stark. What a special thing, I actually traveled to Marvel's world. Do you want to be so naughty what? This one is called Zhou Cheng, why do you call yourself Iron Man? This title is simply inexplicable. And the other party still claims to be a traveler. Although Tony Stark first saw the word traveler. But considering the context before and after, it is obvious that the other party is saying that he is from another world. Parallel universe. New book upload, following the trend with a wave of popular themes, kneeling down for collection and recommendation ticket support, dear book friends. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Does he come from a parallel universe? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Does he come from a parallel universe? Tony Stark does not comment on the identity of the parallel universe visitor, created by the other party. But if that's really the case, it doesn't seem strange that the other party can use methods that they can't even understand to show themselves this diary. After all, they can even shuttle through the universe. That is also a timeless technology that even Tony Stark has not mastered. Of course. This is just logical coherence, that's all. Tony Stark did not completely believe the bizarre description in the diary because of this. Besides that, Tony Stark also noticed the code name given to their universe by the other party, Marvel. What is the special meaning of this word? Tony Stark can't figure it out for now. After many thoughts flashed through his mind, Tony Stark began to continue looking down. This is a super dangerous world. It looks relatively calm now, but all of this is superficial. After Tony Stark announces himself as Iron Man, the era of Marvel's chaos will come to an end. The arrival of the Asa Protoss, the invasion of the Zetarians, the destruction of all humanity by the Aurora Legion, and the eradication of half of the universe's creatures by the Cosmic Family Planning Commission. I have become an ordinary person, a group of extremely panicked and anxious people. The following paragraph, describing the possible future events in this world in the tone of a person who has come over. This also aligns with the parallel universe visitor identity created by the other party. After all, the directions of two parallel universes are highly consistent. The other party's experience in another universe is indeed informative. Just Tony Stark was lost in thought, Iron Man, or something. Was it actually self-proclaimed? At least, the other universe did it themselves. Although Tony Stark doesn't know what the reason is. But since the other person did it themselves, it is also possible for them to do so. Tony Stark did not dwell on this point. What he truly began to pay attention to was the chaotic era described by the other party. Asa Protoss, Zetarii, Aurora Legion, Cosmic Family Planning Commission. These words have caught Tony Stark's high attention. Tony Stark knows about the Asa gods, but that's a mythological legend. Are these myths and legends really not feasible? Is it true that the gods Odin and Thor are all true? Tony Stark couldn't accept it for a while. After all, this sounds too absurd. As for the following characters, Tony Stark naturally had never heard of them. But the Zetarians should sound like aliens. Although it is difficult to judge the Aurora Legion for the time being, they want to eliminate all humanity. As for the Family Planning Commission, Tony Stark never knew that there was also a Family Planning Commission in the universe. But eliminating half of the creatures in the universe is also too heart-stopping, isn't it? Is this the future of another parallel universe? Is it to eliminate all humanity or half the universe? If all of this is true, it is indeed suffocating and despairing. Forget it, it doesn't make much sense to think about all of this. Take it as it comes. Stark has not been kidnapped yet, this is a godsend opportunity. Give it a try, bike to motorcycle to marry by Fume and reach the pinnacle of life. One can count on this wave. Nini, my brother's happiness in the latter half of his life depends on you. The content of the diary ends here. Tony Stark couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Is the other party saying that one day in the future, they will be kidnapped? It's really a joke. Who are you now? Tony Stark, ah. The sole figure of the Stark Group, as seen throughout America, is the upper echelon standing at the top of the pyramid. How dare someone have their own ideas? But judging from the other person's tone, it's quite certain. I even planned to make a big profit when I was kidnapped. The little abacus is quite clever. Although the other party did not say how to make a big profit, it is not difficult to make money by operating the information gap well. Tony Stark was not entangled in this matter. What he's thinking all over his mind now is whether the owner of this diary, Zhou Cheng, is trustworthy or not. Is everything that the other party said true or not? If it is true, that means being kidnapped, and future alien invasions will happen. Tony Stark must respond early. But if it's fake, why did the other party put in so much effort to make such a move? Jarvis. Retrieve all the population of Legion in the United States and find a person named Zhou Cheng. Tony Stark immediately issued such an order to Jarvis. I have finished writing my first diary, what about my reward? While Tony Stark ordered Jarvis to search for Zhou Cheng. Zhou Cheng, located in an old house in a slum in Brooklyn, stared straight at the diary on the table. Looking forward to something. As recorded in the diary, Zhou Cheng is indeed a traveler. In his past life, he was a hardworking online writer, but he still didn't have much talent and just played the full-time poker game. I thought my whole life would just go by in such a daze, but who would have thought? He actually crossed over. Or to travel to a world full of crises like Marvel. The worries expressed by Zhou Cheng in his diary are not all for the sake of writing a diary. But it's really a bit panicked. You know, he's just an ordinary person. Even with the advantage of foresight, Zhou Cheng can avoid crises caused by major events. But the sound of annihilating the tyrant can only rely on luck. Even if you are lucky and become 50% lucky, there is still an eternal clan waiting behind. Can Zhou Cheng calm down? The only consolation is that Zhou Cheng, like other travelers, also obtained a golden finger. Without a doubt, it is the diary in front of it. According to the information bound in his mind, Zhou Cheng was chosen as the lucky one by the supreme god of diary. That's right, the diary is supreme. In Marvel's setting, gods are actually not valuable. What are the gods of dumplings, woodworking, and various strange gods? Grab a handful at a time. The god of diary also exists. However, what was given to Zhou Cheng's notebook was not the god of Marvel World's diary. But rather the supreme god of diaries that transcends the multiverse. Zhou Cheng, whose name is something, is a bit hard to remember. It seems like his name is Stanley. In short, that is a bully existence. And the diary given to oneself by the other party, as long as you write a diary on it, you can receive rewards from all heavens and all worlds. Now that Zhou Cheng has completed his first diary, what kind of reward will he receive? He is looking forward to it. The first diary is completed. Congratulations to the owner of the diary, Zhou Cheng, for receiving the Newcomer gift pack. Seeking a collection and recommendation ticket, Old Iron Men. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Newcomer Reward, Emperor's equipment soars thousands of miles. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 3 Newcomer Reward, Emperor's equipment soars thousands of miles. Schwa. And while those prompt sounds flashed through my mind, Zhou Cheng could also clearly see that a light suddenly flashed through the diary in front of him. When the light dissipates, a beautifully crafted small box appeared before Zhou Cheng's eyes. Without a doubt, this is the so-called Newcomer gift package. 666. It seems that the ultimate goal of a diary is not to dream, but to be true. Zhou Cheng is not to mention how excited he is. Let me see, what exactly is this Newcomer gift pack? Rubbed my hands. Zhou Cheng couldn't wait to open the exquisite small box. Prop. Flying for thousands of miles, attribute. Imperial equipment, source. Cutting the Crimson Eye plane, detailed introduction. At that moment, a bunch of relevant information was also infused into Zhou Cheng's mind at the same time. Zhou Cheng immediately knew what kind of exquisite handicraft it looked like. That's actually an imperial tool from Cutting Eyes. In fact, Zhou Cheng has watched the anime Zhan Tong before and is not unfamiliar with the imperial tool of Wan Li Fei. Simply put, this imperial tool can give people a pair of cool wings. Not only can it make people fly freely like birds, but it can also shoot feathers to attack enemies. From the performance of the anime, it can be seen that its power is actually quite strong, no less than the hot weapons of modern society. Not bad, a very good Newcomer gift package. Zhou Cheng expressed great satisfaction with this reward. At least during this period of time, Marvel has gained some self-protection power. There's no need to say more. Next. Excitedly, Zhou Cheng eagerly picked up the 10,000-mile flight. Then my mind twitched. Shwa! A flash of light shone on his body. A pair of feather wings, resembling angel wings, immediately spread out on Zhou Cheng's back. And the heart moves with the will. Accompanied by Zhou Cheng's heart, he gently waved twice. Whoosh! Zhou Chengren immediately floated up from the ground and suspended in the air. He really flew up. So, is this the feeling of flying? Zhou Cheng is not to mention how excited he is. Flying freely like a bird is something that many people have dreamed of. However, even though technology has reached its current level of development, and there are still many black technologies in Marvel world, they have not been able to truly achieve it. Apart from a few heroes such as Falcon Sam Wilson and Iron Man Tony Stark, who else is there? Even the flights of Falcon and Iron Man are strictly different from those of Zhou Cheng. They all rely on technological equipment. But Zhou Cheng soaring thousands of miles is different. Strictly speaking, Emperor tools cannot be considered as tools, at least they are not ordinary tools. Because imperial tools are a type of magical item. It is made based on dragons, warcraft, and various dangerous species. To put it more bluntly, it is to separate and fix the abilities of some warcraft separately for human use. So not everyone can use imperial tools. It is necessary to obtain the approval of the imperial tools. In other words, the emperor will recognize the master. It is similar to magical tools and immortal tools in fairy tales. For example, just now Zhou Cheng's control over his wings allows his heart to move according to his will and can be directly controlled by his mind. There is really no difference between growing a pair of wings and oneself. Is this something that any technology product can compare to? Besides that, because it is a reward for newcomers. Wanli Feixiang successfully recognized Zhou Cheng as the master and was the only one bound to him. Even if other people can fly thousands of miles, it is simply impossible to use it. The only regret is, Emperor tools are ultimately just external objects, not their own power. But how to put it, Zhou Cheng has the hang of a diary. This is not a problem. In the future, you may acquire powerful physical fitness, bloodline, skills, and even cultivation techniques. No need to worry. Now, let's have a good experience of flying. What a ghost. How can one fully enjoy the limited indoor space? If it's outdoors, Zhou Cheng wouldn't dare to make such waves easily. With his current strength, exposing his wings is not a good thing. After a moment of contemplation, Zhou Cheng had no choice but to suppress the impulse in his heart and put away his flight for thousands of miles. I plan to wait until evening and go to a deserted place to give it a good try. Shwa. After making up his mind, Zhou Cheng took a moment to think. The wings behind disappeared once again, transforming into a small imperial tool. It was put away. At this moment, Zhou Cheng noticed. My own clothes were not torn by the previous wings, resulting in this embarrassing situation of consuming clothes. It can only be said that magic wings are awesome. Haha, good, awesome, worthy of being an emperor. Now, I can also be considered a superhero, right? Please call me an angel, thank you. Zhou Cheng, who was in a good mood, had a thought and started writing a diary again in his diary. It is worth mentioning. This diary is not an ordinary diary. Zhou Cheng doesn't need to write with a pen like usual in a diary. Because it binds Zhou Cheng's consciousness, he can accomplish all of this with his mind. In this way, Zhou Cheng can write a diary anytime, anywhere, as he pleases. Emperor's tools. What is this? Marbury Luxury Villa. Tony Stark looked at the updated content in his diary and fell into contemplation. Although the records in the other party's diary are somewhat detached and fragmented. So much so that there is a lack of connection between the preceding and following text, making analysis somewhat difficult. But one thing is obvious. It is precisely because of that imperial tool that Zhou Cheng identified himself as a superhero. A superhero. Heroes are heroes, why add the word super in front of them? Is it a casual remark or a superhero like Captain America's super warrior? Tony Stark cannot be certain. But Tony Stark believes that even if the other party is truly like Captain America, a different person, it is still very likely. But now, it can only lead to lewd development. We are not Tony Stark, supported by a massive military-industrial complex. His father is also the founder of the Divine Shield Bureau. Even if he openly declares himself Iron Man, no one dares to move. You can also point your nose and curse at the senator. What? What the hell? Tony Stark was completely stunned. It is indeed right to have military-industrial complexes to support it. But when did his own son Howard Stark establish a Divine Shield Bureau? What kind of organization is this? Although Tony Stark is not sure, judging from Zhou Cheng's tone, it seems that this Divine Shield Bureau is very impressive. End of this chapter. Chapter 4 Tony. My father was actually killed. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Tony. My father was actually killed. Jarvis. After thinking about it for a while, Tony Stark began asking his close butler Jarvis, does America have an organization like the Divine Shield? Sir, there is no such organization in my database. Jarvis immediately gave such an answer. However, there is an intelligence agency called the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. The abbreviation of this intelligence agency precisely forms one word, SHIELD. Tony Stark's heart immediately moved. Is it possible that this intelligence organization with a super long and awkward name is the Divine Shield Bureau mentioned in the diary? Check this intelligence organization and see if it has anything to do with my father. Tony Stark once again issued such an order. Sir, this organization was really founded by Mr. Howard. Jarvis immediately gave the answer. Suddenly, a series of related information materials, pictures, text, and so on were collected. It was projected in front of Tony Stark. The predecessor of the National Land Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau was the Strategic Science Corps. This is an organization specifically established by the military during World War II, aimed at combating the Hydra. Mr. Howard joined as the chief scientific advisor and has been cooperating with the military in secret warfare against Hydras. Later, Mr. Howard and Ms. Peggy Carter, as well as Officer Chester Phillips, the director of the Strategic Science Corps, renamed the Corps as the Divine Shield Agency. And it operates as a separate intelligence agency, which has continued to this day. There's really no nonsense in the diary. Tony Stark looked at the dazzling information before him and sighed inwardly. As recorded in the diary, this organization called the Divine Shield Bureau is really impressive. The founder has his own father, which goes without saying. Surprisingly, there is also the famous Peggy Carter. This is a super celebrity. The missed date with Captain America made countless people sigh with regret. Upon closer inspection, Tony Stark couldn't help but be surprised. To this day, the Divine Shield Agency has developed into an international organization. Not even under the jurisdiction of the United States. But rather employed by the 5 permanent members of the United Nations, directly responsible to the World Security Council. It's almost 6 to fly. Tony Stark never expected Howard to establish such a powerful intelligence agency. Look at the records in that diary. In the future, after announcing becoming Iron Man, will this intelligence agency also provide him with some protection? Helping oneself, blocking a lot of trouble. Tony Stark pouted without hesitation. Those guys are really being presumptuous and meddling in their own affairs. Does he need anyone's help, Tony? What a joke. Putting aside those messy thoughts, Tony Stark continued to focus on his diary. Speaking of Howard, it's really a pity this is a giant who created many black technologies, such as maglev trains and body-strengthening potions, in an era of technological backwardness like World War II. Even after so many years of death, he could still save Tony Stark's life. Tony Stark is indeed very intelligent and impressive, but I think he is still a bit inferior to Howard. I won't be able to compete with that old guy. Please, I've already surpassed him, okay. Can he build a circuit board at the age of 4? Can he assemble an engine at the age of 6? Tony Starker was unconvinced at that moment, and could not help roast. That Zhou Cheng, why do you say that? Isn't it just magnetic levitation and body-strengthening potions? If he's willing, he can do it too. As for saving one's own life after years of death, that is even more absurd. Pure nonsense. Will one face any life or death crisis in the future, the kind where one's life is on the line and needs to be saved by others? Serious illness. Accidents. Of course, these possibilities cannot be ruled out. Who can guarantee that they will never get sick or have accidents in their lifetime? But how could all of this be related to my deceased father? People have been dead for so many years. It's a bit regrettable that he was assassinated during his peak period. Otherwise, even if Tony Stark is a genius, he probably has to live under Howard's halo, right? Boom. Tony Stark was instantly stunned, as if struck by lightning. Assassination. My parents died in a car accident, didn't they? Why does the diary say that he was assassinated? Why? Are you joking? A prank? Tony Stark doesn't think so. A person who can present their diary in a way that they don't even understand. So much trouble, just to joke with yourself. This is just a joke, right? Not to mention. Tony Stark thought about it in a different way. My father's identity and status are there, and the chain of interests involved behind it is complex and intricate. There are many enemies, both inside and outside, and many enemies who cannot resist Howard's death. Not to mention it. Tony Stark just found out that his father was also the founder of an intelligence agency. The water inside the intelligence agency is also bottomless. Taking into account this situation comprehensively, it is highly possible for someone to take the risk of assassinating their own father. Despite being assassinated as his own father, he was still classified as an ordinary car accident. No matter who the mastermind behind it is, they all possess tremendous energy. Definitely not an ordinary person. But no matter who it is, if this is true, Tony Stark must be tough to the end. Jarvis. Tony Stark immediately gave Jarvis an order: find all the relevant information about my father back then. I give you the highest authority, some encrypted data, and if needed, you can crack it. I want you to find all the relevant information as quickly as possible. Tony Stark is really angry. Although there is not enough evidence yet, he believes that what is recorded in the diary should be true. The identity of Zhou Cheng is also very likely to be true. Not to mention, this kind of thing is better believed than believed. Understood, sir. Jarvis immediately responded and began searching for all relevant information on the internet. Except for the information already available on the public network. Don't worry, Jarvis really found some encrypted data. Some ordinary level encryption can be directly cracked by Jarvis. But there are also some data that have been encrypted by some relevant departments. That's not something Jarvis can easily crack. When Jarvis told Tony Stark the news, Tony Stark became increasingly unable to maintain his composure. Because this fully demonstrates that there is indeed a hidden truth behind his father's death. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Kidnapping Stark is more reliable. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Kidnapping Stark is more reliable. So, was my father really assassinated? Tony Stark's voice couldn't help but tremble, and his fists instinctively clenched. Although no further evidence has been found yet. But even so, it can still illustrate the problem. If that car accident was just a simple one, why were there so many encrypted files? Even Jarvis said it. Some of the encrypted files have encryption levels that are even higher than military levels. No matter how you look at it, there is a shocking conspiracy behind it. We must thoroughly investigate this matter and uncover the truth behind our father's death. Tony Stark made such a decision secretly in his heart. Of course. This matter is of great significance, we need to consider it in the long run and act with caution. Even if he is Tony Stark, he possesses technology that is ahead of this era. The security system of any police station or even the FBI is effortless and can be easily cracked. There may be some. He needs to at least connect to someone else's local area network first, right? That's not something you can do just by sitting in your luxurious villa. It still requires meticulous planning to achieve a perfect solution. A sudden idea: what if I tell Stark about the killer of the Howard couple? It's a bit of a disadvantage to not take advantage of the advantage of prior knowledge and foresight, as we have finally traveled through it. When the time comes, just ask Stark how many billions he wants to spend, and then he'll just step onto the pinnacle of his life. A beautiful life beckons to me. Does this traveler Zhou Cheng really know the true culprit who killed his parents? Tony Stark stared fixedly at the diary in front of him, unable to maintain peace in his heart. Isn't it just a few $100 million? It's just a drizzle. If Zhou Cheng were willing to tell himself the truth, Tony Stark wouldn't even blink his eyes. Hey, forget it. Let's wash and sleep. This is not writing a novel. Leaving aside the rest, people with the status of Tony Stark are not something that ordinary people can see. Besides, even if they do see it, why do they trust you? I'm afraid I might just be mistaken for a lunatic, right? Tony Stockton was a bit anxious when he started. I believe. Although he still cannot fully trust the diary and everything described above. But regarding the death of his parents, Tony Stark still believed 70%. In this situation, if he spends billions to buy intelligence from the other party, Tony is willing. Anyway, this also involves the truth about the death of one's own parents. However, Tony Stark's brow furrowed slightly again. How do you read the meaning of this diary? It seems that Zhou Cheng didn't know he could also see the diary. Otherwise, no matter what he wants to tell himself, he just needs to communicate with himself in his diary. Do you still have to worry about not seeing yourself and being mistaken for a mental illness? In that case, this diary was not delivered to him by Zhou Cheng, but by someone else. So, who is that other person? Sacred. By this calculation, it's more reliable to expect Stark to be kidnapped. But by the way, why is this hanging hair still okay? Old Iron Men of the Ten Commandments sect, you are awesome. Tony Stark's face turned completely black. That bastard, actually yearning for himself to be kidnapped. Can't we just recite some of our own good? And what kind of ghost is Hangmao? Tony Stark lives such a big life that he has never been called Hanghair before. However, when you see the last line, a sharp light flashed across Tony Stark's face. Is it an organization called the Ten Commandments Gang that kidnapped themselves? Jarvis, check out the Ten Commandments Gang. Tony Stark didn't say anything nonsense and immediately issued such an order to Jarvis. The Ten Commandments Gang, also known as the Ten Rings Gang or the Ten Rings Legion, is an international mysterious organization committed to destroying world peace at all costs. The earliest records about this organization can be traced back hundreds of years. There is not much information that this organization has truly spread, but many of the international turmoil and disputes have the shadow of the Ten Commandments Gang behind them. With Jarvis's voice, some relevant information was also projected in front of Tony Stark. Tony Stark quickly glanced through it and had a clear idea. No wonder he dares to take action against himself. It turns out that the mastermind behind the scenes really has a lot of connections. Surprisingly, it is an international terrorist organization with hundreds of years of history. But Tony Stark still felt something was wrong. Do those terrorist organizations really have the courage to act on themselves? They are just doing things in some small countries, but they actually have the courage to take action against people of their own level. This kind of rank organization doesn't mean you don't know what it means to move yourself, right? Tony Stark felt that the incident of being kidnapped might not be that simple. However, there is currently too little information revealed in the diary, and Tony Stark cannot analyze anything. Even besides asking Jarvis to pay more attention and investigate the Ten Commandments gang, there is nothing else he can do. As for finding some practical things through real investigation that can prevent and stop the kidnapping in advance, Tony Stark doesn't have much confidence either. It's only up to fate. I have to mention it here. Although Stark is a playboy and a second-generation wealthy man, his physical fitness is really amazing. Even though there is a big hole in my chest, I can still swing a sledgehammer in the cave for 2 months. I'm not satisfied. If it were an ordinary person, staying in the intensive care unit for 2 months may not be enough to recover, right? Even Captain America is just that, isn't it? Tony Stark was once again lost in thought. It's not difficult to understand that there's a big hole or something on my chest. Based on the previous and subsequent connections, it is highly likely that he was seriously injured and underwent open chest surgery while being kidnapped by the Ten Commandments gang. There's nothing to worry about. Considering that this is a kidnapping incident, it is reasonable that the terrorists did not thoughtfully prepare a high-end hotel for Tony Stark, but instead hid him in a cave. But what kind of ghost is swinging a sledgehammer? Because the content in the diary is written wherever you think, it's too fragmented and disconnected. Tony Stark is really a bit confused. What is the purpose of the Ten Commandments gang to make themselves swing a sledgehammer? They kidnapped themselves, isn't it for ransom, isn't it for money? So what other conspiracies are really behind this kidnapping? End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Is it necessary for me to be a superhero? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Is it necessary for me to be a superhero? After careful consideration, Tony Stark was unable to come up with a clearer idea. After all, there is indeed too little intelligence available for analysis now. A clever woman cannot cook without rice. Without the support of intelligence, no matter how smart Tony Stark and Jarvis are, it will be of no use. So currently, the most important thing is still the spoilers of the diary. Tony Stark refocused his attention on the diary in front of him. But this time, Tony Stark waited left and right, but there was no more movement in his diary. It seems that this should be the end of the other party's diary this time. However, Tony Stark did not stop, as he still had many things to deal with. A mysterious diary, a traveler who knows the future direction of the world, the truth about the death of one's own parents, and the kidnapping of the Ten Commandments gang. These mysteries are all waiting for Tony Stark to solve and conquer. As for the arrival of the Asa Protoss, alien invasion, and the destruction of half of the universe's creatures by the Cosmic Family Planning Commission. Too far away, too absurd. Tony Stark has no plans to inquire at the moment. At present, Tony Stark is more concerned about these important issues. Tony Stark has no clue about some of the issues at the moment. But there are also some. Tony Stark still made some progress. For example, the identity of Zhou Cheng. Jarvis, how many Zhou Cheng lied did you search for throughout America? After organizing his thoughts, Tony Stark asked Jarvis this question. 3,721 people, sir. Jarvis immediately answered. Tony Stark nodded, indicating that he had a clear idea. Then I started flipping through my diary and analyzing it at the same time. The comparison between I, who have traveled through time and become an ordinary person, shows a sense of panic, and a person with a status like Tony Stark is not something that ordinary people can see. It is obvious that Zhou Cheng in the diary is an ordinary person, even a lower-class citizen. Jarvis, remove all elites and above from those 3,721 people. Marrying Bai Fumei, and reaching the pinnacle of life, you can count on this wave, single, male. Remove all married individuals from the list. The other party's diary still contains a large number of colloquial and online language that is only used by young people. Remove those over the age of 30. Looking at the time he posted several diaries, it runs through the working hours of the working class. He either has a leisurely job that allows him to write diaries during working hours. Either they are unemployed vagrants, students, or other unemployed individuals. Jarvis, based on all these criteria, how many people are left after screening? 273 people, sir. Jarvis immediately gave the answer. I also projected all the relevant information of these 273 people to Tony Stark. If Zhou Cheng were there, he would have discovered that his personal file information was also prominently included. Are there 273 people? Tony Stark rested his hand on his cheek and quickly scanned the dense information in front of him. Not enough. Although over 90% of the people have been screened out, there are still over 200 people left. Having Jarvis stare at over 200 people or something is naturally not a problem from a technical perspective. But Tony Stark doesn't want to make himself look like some voyeur. Of course. Now Tony Stark doesn't have any better options and can only do it temporarily. Jarvis, keep an eye on them first. After a moment of contemplation, he still issued such an order to Jarvis. Wait until the diary reveals more information again in the future, with further screening criteria, and then slowly screen without delay. Let's put an end to Zhou Cheng's matter for now. Tony Stark waved his hand and all the data projections in front of him disappeared. Next. Tony Stark began to think carefully about how to quietly invade relevant departments and crack those encrypted files. I'll go, this is a bit of a joke, isn't it? Isn't this diary something you can write just because you want to? Inside the old house. Zhou Cheng looked at the line of words that appeared in his diary and suddenly felt speechless. Insufficient host source points, unable to record. Please supplement the source points immediately. That's right. This diary of Zhou Cheng did come to an end, but it was not initiated by Zhou Cheng. He was originally writing with great enthusiasm. Who would have thought that while writing, the diary would prompt that there was no original point? Writing this diary actually requires consuming something called the origin point. This is so special. It's simply unheard of. But on second thought, okay. This diary is not an ordinary diary, is it? Of course, the more crucial thing is. This is a rule set by their supreme god, what else can Zhou Cheng do? He wants to gain benefits through his diary, and to become stronger through it, he can only obediently follow their rules. Since the source points are not enough, we can only supplement them. Sure enough, there is no good thing about falling traps in the sky. Even if there are failures, we must follow the principle that only with effort can we reap rewards. Do nothing, sit there and use your brain to YY out a few lines of text to reach the pinnacle of life. I'm really thinking about farting. Zhou Cheng just made a slight roast, and soon saw it through. Isn't it the origin point? The plate is finished. So how can we obtain the origin point? The diary naturally gave the answer, and Zhou Cheng carefully examined it. The official explanation is quite lofty, imposing, and insightful. But when it comes to implementing the action plan, it can basically be summarized in 4 words. Cracking down on criminals. This is so special. Zhou Cheng couldn't help but feel a little speechless. He just joked about becoming a superhero, but unexpectedly, his words became a prophecy. I dare to be a superhero myself. Oh my goodness. Originally, Zhou Cheng planned to continue his lewd development. Now it seems that I am going to be forced to open a business. Damn it, superheroes are superheroes. Anyway, we are also people with imperial tools now. Who is afraid of who? Zhou Cheng quickly made such a decision. Anyway, that's also an imperial tool. Tony Stark has not been kidnapped yet, and Iron Man has not yet been born. superheroes and the like have not surfaced. With that pair of wings, Zhou Cheng can also have great potential. So where are you going next to? Act chivalrous and uphold justice, and harvest the source point. Zhou Cheng fell into contemplation. That's settled. And soon, Zhou Cheng couldn't help but slap. He has already made a decision. The new book of the Old Street is uploaded, and you kneel down to ask for a recommendation ticket and collection support. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. This is the power of imperial tools. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 8. Handheld ninjas. Merciless annihilation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Handheld ninjas. Merciless annihilation. It is truly an imperial tool. In front of ordinary people, it's completely overwhelming. No, it should be said that as long as there is no gun in hand, it is a crushing level. Watching the two villains fleeing in disarray, Zhou Cheng couldn't help but nod with great satisfaction. Just now, Zhou Cheng said that the small test of flying thousands of miles was very effective. Fully in line with Zhou Cheng's psychological expectations. The only regret is that Zhou Cheng's own strength is too weak now. He is just an ordinary person. If the enemy is holding a gun in their hand, their various reactions may not be in time, and there is still a high risk of being shot. So now Zhou Cheng only dares to bully those third-rate people who cannot get guns. Origin point +1, origin point +1, and at this moment. Two warning sounds flashed through Zhou Cheng's mind. He couldn't help thinking about roast again. Although these two villains are indeed super soy sauce and dragon traps, they are evenly matched. But each person only harvested one source point, which is a bit stingy, isn't it? Is the Supreme God really not planning to let himself rest? I am a traveler with a difficult fate. Traveling through time is also the life of working. Roast belongs to roast, and the work should be continued. For the sake of the origin, Zhou Cheng had no choice but to quickly put aside his chaotic thoughts. Schwa. With a thought, the wings behind flickered. Under the gaze of the rescued professional woman, Zhou Cheng once again transformed into a big bird soaring into the sky. It was just a few strokes, and then it merged into the darkness and disappeared. Only stunned professional women were left behind, and statues were usually erected on the spot. What a special thing. Dare to feel that those wings can really fly. Is it too exaggerated? Origin point +1, source point +2, next. Zhou Cheng's figure began to haunt every corner of the kitchen in hell. Fortunately, it is a city of sin like Hell's Kitchen. Almost every place has criminal incidents happening, with criminals appearing. This has brought great convenience to Zhou Cheng. He harvests a wave of origin points almost every once in a while. Overall, the harvest is quite good. During this process, Zhou Cheng also noticed that not every criminal can only bring one source point. Some of the criminals provide slightly higher origin points. The specific reason is not yet clear to Zhou Cheng. He can only guess based on his own experience. Perhaps some criminals have stronger abilities, so they are more valuable. But whether it is or not is still uncertain because the sample size is too small. But Zhou Cheng is not in a hurry either. Anyway, the kitchen in hell is short of everything, it just doesn't lack criminals or leaks. He can slowly figure out this problem. After harvesting two ordinary criminals in succession, Zhou Cheng waited for such an opportunity. Bang, bang. Bang bang. Just as I passed through a corner, a very intense and exaggerated sound immediately came from ahead. There is the sound of cold weapons colliding, and even the sound of breaking through the air. Just exaggerate. Zhou Cheng's heart twitched slightly. As I followed the sound and looked forward, my expression suddenly froze. Under the cover of night. But I saw several martial arts masters engaged in an extremely fierce battle. 4 of them were dressed in a kind of ninja costume and covered their faces. In his hand, he held a shining samurai sword. A stormy attack was launched against another masked person who had wrapped his head in a scarf and only exposed his mouth and nose. For a moment, swords and shadows flickered around, making Zhou Cheng feel a bit dizzy. It is not an exaggeration to say. This big battle is no less standardized than the scenes in some martial arts movies. This is Night Demon Hero. Zhou Cheng immediately recognized the masked man who had been beaten back and forth like a dog. That is undoubtedly the fearless figure of Hell's Kitchen, the Night Demon Hero. But at this moment, the situation with the Night Demon Warrior is very bad. He retreated in a state of embarrassment, with obvious wounds on his body. Firstly, it is evident that the current Night Demon Warriors are still in an early stage. No uniforms, no weapons, just relying on one's own fists to strike criminals. Secondly, it is natural for 2 fists to be unbeatable with 4 hands. As for those 4 guys who deal with the Night Demon Warrior. Ninjas. Hand in hand. Zhou Cheng also quickly made a judgment. The identity of the ninja who appeared in the kitchen of hell is beyond doubt. But if it's a hand gesture, it's a huge creature. The water behind it is also bottomless. It seems a bit excessive for Zhou Cheng to provoke such a presence with his current background. Forget it. Let's stabilize our hands. After just a moment of contemplation, Zhou Cheng quickly made such a decision. There are so many leaks in the kitchen of hell, there is no need to provoke such a stubborn stubble. Schwa. Just wanting to leave quietly. A ninja from the Night Demon Hero was besieged in the front, but suddenly stopped and turned back. His gaze was like a knife, directly hooked on Zhou Cheng. Zhou Cheng's chrysanthemums tightened slightly. Ninjas or something, their perception is too keen, isn't it? He swore he didn't make any noise. Chang. Step by step. With a flash of his sword, the ninja said nothing nonsense. He began to pick up Sensen's samurai sword and quickly charged towards Zhou Cheng. Hand in hand can act in such a domineering and ruthless manner. All witnesses must be killed to the death. Hurry up and leave here. The Night Demon Warrior naturally used radar senses to perceive Zhou Cheng long ago. At this moment, I sensed that a ninja was going to kill Zhou Cheng, and I felt extremely anxious. He used all his tricks to rush over and rescue Zhou Cheng. Unfortunately, he was stopped by the 3 ninjas in front of him. I have no ability to do anything at all. I can only watch as the distance between that ninja and Zhou Cheng gets closer and closer. Okay. If that's the case, then we can only be tough. What else can Zhou Cheng do if they all come over to kill him? His mind twitched. Schwa. The wings behind me suddenly spread out. What? The handheld ninja on the opposite side appeared calm on the surface, but in his heart he was very puzzled. What did the other party do? What's the use of making this pair of wings? But the next moment. She. Feathers burst out one after another from those wings. Nanny. The ninja's expression suddenly changed. Instinctively, he waved his samurai sword in defense. However, how could it possibly be defended? She. The next moment. Its body shook violently, and those feathers inserted it into a hedgehog. He fell to the ground in great sorrow. Unlike before when there was no assassin, who only injured people, Zhou Cheng took the opportunity to kill this time. These ninjas in the hand club can be left untouched. Once they engage, they must be completely eliminated. Otherwise, there will be endless troubles ahead. End of this chapter. Chapter 9 Night Demon Hero. Who is this person? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Night Demon Hero. Who is this person? What situation? Whether it's the other three hand-held ninjas or the struggling night demon warrior. In an instant, everyone was stunned. The development of the matter can be said to have completely exceeded their expectations. Originally, none of them had taken Zhou Cheng to heart. Subconsciously, it was just an unlucky person who passed by unintentionally. That's all. If you flip your hands, you will be killed by that hand club ninja. But who would have thought that there was a 180-degree reversal in the situation? The one who was instantly killed was not the unlucky guy at all, but the ninja from the hand club. Even if the few people on site were slow to react, they should understand now. Those who come are not ordinary people. However, when did such a prominent figure appear in the Hell Kitchen? Killing with wings. It's completely unheard of. Origin point +5, but Zhou Cheng didn't have the time to pay attention to what other people's reactions were. Because in his mind, such a prompt sound rang out again. This gave Zhou Cheng a slight boost in his spirit. Sure enough. My previous guess was correct. The stronger the criminal, the more the source of contribution they make. A regular hand club ninja can contribute 5 source points, so what about a higher level high lady? What about the other 5 fingers? Where is the target eye, and where is Jinha? What about the other Marvel famous supervillains? It seems that even the Supreme God doesn't want to keep his eyes fixed on those vulgar low girls all day. After all, there are also people who cheat, but we can't make it so low. Grade. Of course. Zhou Cheng also has self-awareness. Take a bite at a time for your meal, and walk step by step on the road. Now that he hasn't grown up yet, he can only use some small characters to practice his skills. As for those higher quality chives, don't worry, we have a long way to go. When he constantly receives rewards and becomes stronger, it is the moment when he starts waving his butcher's knife at those high-quality leaks. Chung chung. The sound of 2 sharp blades breaking through the air interrupted the silence of the scene. It also interrupted Zhou Cheng's thoughts. But the 3 hand-held ninjas quickly exchanged glances and immediately responded. 2 of the hand-held ninjas swung their samurai swords again and charged towards Zhou Cheng. Leave only one person to temporarily restrain the night demon hero. That's right. The current night demon warrior is scarred and exhausted, and even a ninja can temporarily suppress it. Whoosh! Zhou Cheng naturally had no more nonsense. His wings flickered slightly behind him, and he suddenly flew up into the air. Just hovering in the air, looking down at the 2 hand-held ninjas on the ground. Lousy is in the air, no matter how fierce your skills are, no matter how sharp the samurai sword is, what can you do to me? Isn't this wave stable? What? The hand-held ninja on the ground froze again. Flying up. Do those wings of Dare Qing really know how to fly? If that's the case, they'll be a bit helpless. How can they deal with someone flying in the sky that they can't even reach? In addition, this person also has the skill of shooting feathers to harm people. Aren't they going to become live targets? Not good. The situation is extremely unfavorable. She. Sure enough, the next moment, Zhou Cheng decisively launched an attack on the 2 hand-held ninjas. Accompanied by the dense and piercing sound of breaking through the sky, a large number of feathers shot down like raindrops. In the blink of an eye, it shot in front of the 2 hand-held ninjas, covering the space in front of both of them. It's just so exaggerated. Those 2 hand-held ninjas, who had just lifted their samurai swords, didn't have time to make any moves. I was instantly submerged in countless feathers. He remained motionless. Flash sale. These 2 well-trained and skilled killing machines. In the blink of an eye, he was instantly killed by Zhou Cheng. Hanging is so domineering. Whoosh! After quickly killing the 2, there was only 1 ninja left in the hand club. Zhou Cheng naturally won't let it go. Immediately, with a thought, he flew straight towards the other person. Night Demon, move away. Quickly greeted the Night Demon warrior. The Night Demon hero immediately darted aside like a nimble monkey. Zhou Cheng had no further concerns. She. Another large feather shot past. Shooted the last hand club ninja into a hedgehog. Bang bang. The samurai sword in the opponent's hand fell to the ground, making a crisp metallic collision sound. Then he himself, like a dead dog, fell to the ground and remained motionless. The scene became quiet like this. The life and death crisis of the Night Demon hero has been lifted like this. It's simply easy and enjoyable. Of course. It cannot be said to be a life and death crisis. After all, even if Zhou Cheng didn't intervene, the Night Demon hero couldn't have died here. However, no matter what, it is impossible to escape so easily. Whoosh! Ignoring the Night Demon hero, Zhou Cheng flapped his wings again and suddenly rose into the air with a swoop. Directly skimming through the sky, merging into the night, quickly disappearing from sight. The Night Demon hero was panting heavily while staring blankly at the direction in which Zhou Cheng had left. My mind is filled with such a question. Who exactly is this person sacred? When did the number 1 character appear in Hell's Kitchen? Origin point +1, origin point +1, origin point +1. After leaving from the Night Demon hero, Zhou Cheng once again created a wave of dungeons in various parts of the Hell Kitchen. 4 waves of leaks were harvested one after another. With a moment of thought, I checked and now I have a total of 40 balance points in my account. According to the rules formulated by the Supreme God. These fundamental points can support Zhou Cheng in writing a 4,000-word diary. In addition, except for the first diary that activates the gift package, there is a requirement that all other diaries should not be less than 200 words. That is to say, Zhou Cheng worked hard for most of the night and could eat directly for 20 days. For Zhou Cheng Lai, he is naturally not satisfied at all. Of course, more is better for this kind of thing. However, Zhou Cheng is now an ordinary person who doesn't even exercise much, and his physical fitness is very average. Even in all battles, Zhou Cheng used his wings for seconds without expending any physical energy. But until now, Zhou Cheng has also been exhausted. Forget it, that's all for today. I can't hold on anymore. Feeling his current state, Zhou Cheng could only give up decisively. Everything needs to be done in moderation. Otherwise, too much is not enough. Whoosh! After making up his mind, Zhou Cheng no longer hesitated. I spread my wings and flew away from the kitchen of hell. Returning home and checking the time, it was already 3 a.m. Zhou Cheng, exhausted both physically and mentally, couldn't even take off his clothes and collapsed on the bed. Sinking into a dreamland. End of this chapter. Chapter 10 Stark's Collapse. Who the hell is it called? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Stark's Collapse. Who the hell is it called? Ringing bells. Ringing bells. The next day. Zhou Cheng, who was sleeping soundly, was awakened by a very urgent ringing of his phone. Who, this morning? You're not letting anyone sleep anymore. People are very restless when they are awakened from a deep sleep. After Zhou Cheng instinctively answered the phone, his tone became a bit impatient. Yellow-skinned monkey, I see your wings are hard, aren't they? Dare to speak to me in such a tone. Do you still want to do it? A series of roars suddenly came from the receiver, and even the roof was about to overturn. Why does this voice sound so familiar? Zhou Cheng's drowsiness disappeared instantly. I took my phone and saw that it was indeed. The title noted on the communication interface directly catches the eye. SB. Silly hanging. This is so special, isn't it the same foolish boss as his predecessor? The memories from his predecessor suddenly surged in his heart, leaving Zhou Cheng completely infuriated. As is well known, racial discrimination is a serious phenomenon in the United States. Especially Asians, sometimes even lower in status than black. On the surface, my predecessor worked in a very respectable software company. Brilliant and radiant, speak twice as much with face. But in fact, it's all superficial. The position of the predecessor in the company is truly inferior to that of a dog. The ubiquitous discrimination and unfair treatment in daily life goes without saying. Just his superior Smith is suffocating enough. Zhou Cheng sorted out the memories of his predecessor, and the old man never even considered his predecessor as an adult. He is always drinking, without any good expression. The hardest and most tiring work is all handed over to the predecessor, and even the protagonist has to help him complete his own job. Just 4 days ago, my predecessor worked overtime to clean Smith's butt and typed code, staying up all night for 2 consecutive days. The special student passed out at the workstation. Smith just gave his predecessor 2 days off to go home and rest well. But for the agreed-upon rest, Smith still needs his predecessor to code the corresponding code at home. What else can the predecessor of Kubi do? Continue working overtime. Result: I died suddenly. I am exhausted from life and death. How hard to force. Because it fused all the memories of his predecessor and occupied his body, Zhou Cheng's empathy reached its peak in an instant. He once again heard Smith shouting and became angry on the spot. Have you finished writing the code? You'd better give me some good news. Otherwise, I would definitely have driven you, like a bereaved dog. Smith's voice continued to come from the receiver. Open your MB. Old SB. Zhou Cheng directly interrupted Smith's words, and he came up with a scolding and greeting. Smith on the other side of the receiver suddenly became confused. Did you just curse at me? Do you know what you're doing? Is your brain flooded? Through the earpiece, Zhou Cheng could also feel the other person's frenzy. That's right, I've been holding on to you for so long because my mind was flooded. You disgusting white ghost like a pig. Don't you want the code? I've written it. I'll burn it for you when I go back to the grave. Goodbye, inside. Doodle doodle. Hurry up and curse in pain, and decisively hang up and pull a black dragon. Then he quickly logged into the work group and shook out all of Smith's black materials. I also sent it to the email of the boss, by the way. Then delete group, withdraw from group, and block all contact information. After a fierce operation like a tiger, Zhou Cheng finally felt comfortable. My predecessor, you don't need to thank me. I took it out on your behalf. Of course. After Zhou Cheng's operation, his work was 100% ruined. But Zhou Cheng said that this is not a problem, it's just a breeze. As a heavy hitchhiker, if you still work hard and become a social animal, it would be too embarrassing for you, wouldn't it? What? Do travelers also have to eat and spend money? Zhou Cheng stated that this is also not a problem. After Tony Stark was kidnapped, he sold the house and exchanged it all for Stark Industries stocks. Then wait for Iron Man to emerge, and Stark Industrial's stock will soar like this. Isn't the money here? This is just a small idea. Anyway, the parents of his predecessor died in a car accident 5 years ago, and the old house at home became completely owned by Zhou Cheng alone. He is the final say of everything. Not to mention, perhaps in the future, Zhou Cheng will receive some other rewards that will allow him to obtain a large amount of wealth. Don't worry really. The most crucial thing. It's better to write a good diary and improve your strength, this is the way. Thinking of this, Zhou Cheng once again became full of enthusiasm. After a simple wash, I hastily made some breakfast mats. Zhou Cheng eagerly opened his notebook again. Starting to use his thoughts, schwa rushed to write. People feel refreshed during happy events, and ancient people never deceived me, that silly guy is probably still doubting life now, right? I really want to see what expression he has in person. That must be very exciting, sir. The diary has been updated again. Marbury Villa. Jarvis, who had been monitoring the movements of his diary, immediately began to remind Tony Stark. Tony Stark's heart immediately moved. I immediately stopped my movements, picked up my diary, and ran to sit down on the sofa. I began to observe carefully. Glancing at it, it seems that Zhou Cheng's mood is quite good today. I just don't know what happy thing happened. But if that's the case, I really have to rely on big feces, hope another day when shit big is kidnapped. All the melon seed drinks and beer are ready, sit down and wait. Tony Stark. This guy is poisonous, isn't he? Don't wait so long for me to be kidnapped, do you? I have never offended you. Also, what kind of ghost is this big and special shit? Such a foul-smelling nickname, fortunately that guy could also come up with it. It should be fast too. Yesterday I read the news that the military has decided to award this year's Extreme Award to Shida. If I remember correctly, Shit de Jong stood up Rod's pigeon at the award ceremony. And it seemed like not long after, they were pulled by the 10 Commandments gang to forge iron in the cave. Isn't this the retribution of being arrogant and arrogant? Haha. Tony Stark's face suddenly froze. He ignored Zhou Cheng's teasing of him and was not surprised by what he did to stand up for. That is indeed Tony Stark's style of action. What Tony Stark is most concerned about now is another very important matter. Is the day when I was kidnapped approaching? The military has already notified themselves and will award them in 15 days. So, do you still have over half a month left? End of this chapter.